Okay.
If you have to go, don't worry about it.
No. I'm after it's remote. It's remote.
Okay, Gavaldik. So we are up to the very top of Daf Dalet Amud Aleph, and just to backtrack how we got here is the Mishnah tells us that there's Yadois Nedarim. And when I say the Mishnah tells us that, that's only with a Chesura Mechsura, because in fact the Mishnah doesn't say that. But with the Chesura Mechsura, it's Yadois Nedarim. The Gemara wanted to know how we know that Yadois Nedarim. So the Gemara quoted a pasuk that says, "Ish kiyafli linder neder lahazir nazir lashem." So we learned from the lahazir nazir that is an unusual lashon because it's putting the. I'm sorry, it doesn't say lahazir, no, it says nazir lahazir. It puts the noun before the verb. That's an unusual expression, and from there we learn that yodis naziris k'naziris, and being that naziris and nedavis are naziris and nedarim are mentioned in the same pasuk, we have a reciprocal hekesh, meaning there's certain halachas that we know by naziris, such as yad naziris k'naziris, that we export to nedarim, which answers the question of our Mishnah, how we know Yodis Nedarim Kedarim. And we also, there's a lot of halachas that are known in Nedarim that we also apply to Naziris. And one of the halachas that apply to Nedarim is a Isra Bal Yacher. You're not allowed to delay the fulfillment of a neder. So if you make a neder to bring a carbon, you say, Harei Alai Oila, you have 3 regalim to bring that carbon, and if you don't, you're ever Bal Ta'acher. So the Gemara wants to know, since we're learning the Isra Bal Ta'acher, that it applies to Nazir, how does that manifest itself? Where would there be a case where a Nazir would do every Bal Ta'acher? Because unlike a carbon, where you say Arela Oila, there's still the physical action of bringing that carbon. And if you delay that, you'll be every Bal Ta'acher. But if you say already Nazir, you are instantly a Nazir. Since you are instantly a Nazir, there is no more to do. You can't be ever about to acher because you became a nazir instantly. So we needed to find a case where there's a delay. So the Gemara answered that if a person says, I accept upon myself naziris to be done before I die, so that's not actually a kabbalah naziris, but it's a commitment to be the kabbalah naziris right away, because you don't know when you're going to die. So therefore, it's as if you said, I'm going to be the kabbalah naziris as soon as possible. And every moment that you're not makabel naziris makes you be over about Ta'acher.
Oh, so he did a naziris without a timeline?
He gave himself a timeline. He basically said, I'm going to do it immediately. Because he says, I'm going to do it a minute before, I will make sure to fulfill my naziris before I die. Since he doesn't know when he's going to die, it's as if he said, I am going to be makabel naziris immediately.
Yeah, but for how long?
Stam naziris shloshim yom.
So then, why not then he's going to be mechuyev a carbon 30 days from now, and he has a year to bring the carbon.
Well, we're not talking about a carbon here. We're talking about delaying his becoming a nazir. Now, you brought up a very interesting point. Is there an opportunity to say that maybe the Baal Ta'acher by nazir refers to the karbonis that he's supposed to bring?
Correct.
That's one of the pshatim that the Gemara is going to introduce very soon. And that's a very good point. But right now, the Gemara is trying to find about Ta'acher in the actual fulfillment of the Naziris. So
you're asking when would the 30 days start? Is that the question, or when does it finish? What's the Gemara saying about Ta'acher?
We wonder when you're over about Ta'acher. At one point, are you guilty of delaying the starting of your Naziris? And in such a case, you're guilty of delaying the starting of Naziris immediately after you said that lo after min ha'olam hey nazir. The moment you said those words, lo after min ha'olam hey nazir, you're going to be guilty of delaying the acceptance of your Naziris unless you immediately follow that with a harei alai nazir, harei nazir.
But the carbon, the Baal Ta'acher by the carbon.
We're not discussing the carbon now.
Okay, no, that carbon is Ziris, but the carbon that he was mechuyev to bring over 3, otherwise he was going
to. Like you said, Arei Alai Oila, you mean?
Yeah, so like he has 3 regolim to bring it.
Correct.
Because it's not beyond.
But what if a guy said by a carbon, what if a guy said by a carbon, not put a rei alai oila? So a rei alai oila miyad. I'll bring an oila today.
Oh.
There, everybody agrees that he's over Baal Ta'achar right away.
Okay.
So that will be similar to this case of Naziris. If he said like after Oilam Ache Nazir, it basically he's committing himself to accept upon himself Naziris right away.
If he was Tameh when he said it.
Oh, that's such a Gavalta Gehar. These are all the things that Gemara is about to introduce. That's a beautiful R. It's a beautiful R. So just to finish off from Friday, the example the Gemara gave of a Naziris that's a delayed start, which I'm to start right away, was this. But the Ran said, really the Gemara could have said a much simpler case. The Gemara could have said, when someone said, I commit to accept upon myself Naziris within 2 years. So then I'll have 2 years to fulfill this Naziris. And that really would be a perfectly legitimate case of Baal Ta'achar by Naziris. The Gemara picked this interesting case where one said, Loi iftir min ha'olam ha'chei nazir, which really we didn't need that case, and we could have used a simpler case, but the Gemara is just trying to teach us an additional chiddush. It's Rava speaking. Rava was trying to teach an additional chiddush that when one says, Loi iftir min ha'olam ha'chei nazir, we translate that as meaning I will immediately accept upon myself Naziris. So we got a bonus chiddush out of it. So now you all suggested unbelievable suggestions for why there's an Isser Baal Ta'achar by Nazir, and the Gemara, in fact, is going to mention every single one of them. So we're right now at the very first word at the top of Tav Aleph. Rabbi Acha Yaakov Omar, he wants to suggest another case of someone who's over Baal Ta'achar. Kegoyin, the Nodar, but the Bach changes it to Kegoyin, the Nozar. He accepted upon himself Naziris, and he's in the basic chorus, similar to what the Beryl said. So he's been a Kabbalah Naziris, and he's instantly Tameh. He's already Tameh before he begins. So the Ran tells us something very, very important. And what the Ran tells us is, and I'm going to read it here, if someone is Makabal upon himself Naziris, and he's in the basic chorus, it is incumbent upon him to lead immediately. Naziris. This is a key phrase. In other words, if one is Makabal Naziris while he's in the basic verse, in fact, he doesn't become a Nazir, but he becomes Mechuyev to get out of that basic verse as soon as possible. And then after he leaves the basic verse, he has to accept upon himself Naziris. And if he doesn't immediately leave the basic verse, that's how he will be over Baal Ta'achar. Zok to Gemara, this is a very good suggestion for how one can be over Baal Ta'achar. That's really good if that's how you hold. That if someone is Mekabel Naziris in the basic verse, in fact, he doesn't become a Nazir. And if he drank wine, he wouldn't get malchus for drinking the wine because he didn't become a Nazir. But he has to run out of the basic verse and then be Mekabel himself Naziris. That works perfectly. But not everybody holds like that. Rabbi Yochanan happens to hold that he becomes a Nazir immediately, and he even is going to get malchus if he drinks wine, but he got to leave. So there, according to Rabbi Yochanan, mi ika Baal Ta'achar, would it be Baal Ta'achar? That couldn't be, because the moment he said Arei Alai Nazir in the basic verse, he actually became a Nazir. He has other violations. He's Tamei, but his Naziris happened right away. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, this is not a good example of a Baal Ta'achar. And let's see the Ran inside. There's actually a machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish about this halacha, this very halacha, in the third parak of Nazir. The Rabbi Yochanan, according to Rabbi Yochanan, lucky. If someone's mekabel Naziris in the basic forest and then he drinks wine, he will get malchus for it because he in fact became a Nazir. The chayla alei Naziris miyad. Well, Reish Lakish loy chayla alei Naziris miyad. Reish Lakish holds that the Naziris cannot be chal if he's in the basic forest at the time. It's just a responsibility, a mandate to immediately leave the basic forest and then be makabel Naziris. Well, the chinofik me basic forest tzorich lachzor lakabel. According to Rabbi Yochanan, who holds he became a Nazir even inside the basic forest. Michael Maimer, there is no Baltacher. The given the Chayla Naziris like a Baltacher. There is no Baltacher. And the Rabbi Rauschberg takes out the next word. Chayla Naziris Me'alter. So this is already later in the Gemara. So Zok the Gemara v'oid. This is how we explain the Machlokes Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan holds that he's a Nazir right away. Rish Lakish holds he's not a Nazir. He must first leave the basic forest and be Makabel Nazirs. But there was another opinion as to how to understand the Machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. The Mar Bar Vashi told us that everybody agrees that Chayla Naziris Alame Alter. Even Rish Lakish agrees that the Naziris was Chal, which means that there's no Baal Ta'acher here. So what is the Machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish? They're only arguing about whether or not one gets malchus for drinking wine. But everybody agrees that the Naziris is chal right away. So this option of how to explain Naziris with Baal Ta'acher is not an option. Because someone who was makabel upon himself Naziris in the basic forest is not over Baal Ta'acher because he immediately became a Nazir. Let's see the Ram. Even according to Rish Lakish, there is no new Kabbalah's Naziris required. Kinofik when he leaves the basic forest. Indian Malchus who the whole machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish is only whether or not this person will get Malchus if he drank wine in the basic forest. If he will get Malchus for eating grapes while he's in the basic forest. Since both according to Rabbi Yochanan and according to Rish Lakish, if someone's makabel Naziris in the basic forest, they become a Nazir immediately. My Baal Ta'acher. Where is there a Baal Ta'acher? Zok the Gemara afilu hachi. Even in such a case, there's a Baal Ta'acher. You know why? Kom Leib Baal Ta'acher b'shem dekama acher Naziris to Tahira. So the Gemara introduced a new concept. Baal Ta'acher doesn't only have to be that I'm delaying the Kabbalah's Naziris. Baal Ta'acher could even be if I did the Naziris right away, but I'm not fulfilling the Naziris of Tahira. That's also something that you could be over Baal Ta'acher for. It's a very big chiddush, because this is a new concept of Baal Ta'acher. My Kabbalah was chal right away. I'm just not fulfilling the mandate of the Naziris, because I became Tamei. Let's see the Ran inside. Zok the Heilige Ran, the Kamachel Naziris to Tahira, Umishamachi Kam Leib Baal Ta'acher. So Amar Bashi, Hoyel v'chein. Now that you made up this new type of Baal Ta'acher, which is not what we expect normally, that you're delaying in fulfilling the Kabbalah. Rather, it's just because you're violating the Naziris. And let's see how the Ram articulates that. Hoyel v'kach kloimer, even the Amrit. Now that you've said the Ablagav the Cholale Naziris, even though he actually became a Nazir, even the Lechayil Alei b'Tahira, since he's not calling him while he's tar, Ika Baal Ta'acher, that also qualifies as the Isra Baal Ta'acher, and we'll hold it right there, and we'll go back into the Gemara. Amar Abashi, Hoyel B'chein, Nazir Shatima Atzmai B'mezid. And this is what Rav Beryl said. A Nazir who purposely made himself Tamei. He was a Nazir, a regular Nazir, and he went and became Tamei. Over Baal Ta'acher, the Naziris Tahira. That would also be a case of Baal Ta'acher. You don't need an elaborate case where he made this Naziris in the basic forest. A regular Nazir who made a regular Naziris, and one day he made himself Tamei. He will be over Baal Ta'acher of Tahira, because now you've introduced this new concept that just not fulfilling your Naziris will also get you a Baal Ta'acher penalty. That's exactly what Rav Beryl said. So now we'll see the full round inside. Af Nazir, Tahar, a regular Nazir who was Tahar, Shetimei Atzmai B'mezid, who purposely became Tamei and violated his Naziris, over Baal Ta'acher, he is over Baal Ta'acher, Velucky, and he gets Malchus. Yafal the Kfar Izerei Rachmana, Atoma betray Lavi, even though there's already Lavin to cover a Nazir who makes himself Tamei. K'dichsiv lo yitamei, u'chsiv nami al kol nafshus meis lo yavoy. So there's already two Lavin that'll get two Malchus for making himself Tamei. Well, Amar Nami, the pasuk says, "Vayomim Marishonim Yiplu." The Naziris that he counted up until the point where he became Tamei gets reset. But that doesn't mean it doesn't mean that there's no other punishment other than these two lavin of nafshesh meis yavoy and lo yitame. Rather, there'll be another set of malchus for the generic halacha of baltacher. Elamilka nami lucky mishum baltacher. So let's have a look. Let's do an inventory of how many options we have for baltacher. We have the case of the fellow who says, I'm going to be Mekabel Naziris within 2 years, or I'm not going to die before I'm a Nazir. That's one option. The second option was a Nazir who said that, who made himself Naziris in the basic forest, and that's this new type of baltacher that he's pushed off his Naziris to Tahira. And the third option was a regular Nazir who violated his Naziris and became Tamid. But there's going to be more. There's still going to be more. So Zog to Gemara, Rab Acha, Bareid Ravika Amar, I have another way for him to be over Baltacher. And this is similar to what Akiva said. It's not a Baltacher of Naziris, it's a Baltacher of a Naziris related chiyuv. And what is that? Over Baltacher Taglachosai. If you had a regular Nazir, and after he completed his Naziris, part of the discharge process is they bring 3 karbonos, but he cuts his hair. Well, what if he didn't cut his hair? What if he delayed in cutting his hair? And he wasn't doing the process to unwind his naziris, he will also be over baltacher. So another baltacher. It's pashut, according to the manamar who holds that his naziris is not discharged until he actually takes the haircut, meaning he's not allowed to drink wine until he actually takes that haircut. That's pashut, that there would be a baltacher by delaying the taglachas because it's an integral part of his release. Even if you hold that he could drink wine even before the haircut, but mitzvahs giluach mi'aloi mechai. Even though taglachas is not ma'akev, the discharge of the naziris, but there's still a mitzvah to do it, and if you don't do it promptly, you're going to be over baltacher. Now, what is considered promptly? That I have to leave open for now. But whatever it is, if you delay, and I don't know how much you have to delay, you will be over baltacher. So this is a fourth option for baltacher, and it's not baltacher of the naziris, it's baltacher of a naziris related obligation. Okay, let's see if we have Ran on it. The Ran says taglachas makevis. Look to he there are belozah v'rabbanan. It happens to be a machlokes in the Seches Nazir that we'll get to soon between the belozah and the rabbanan. The belozah hadachsiv v'achar yishta hanazir yayin. After the Torah lists off all of the entire process of the discharging of the naziris, it says, and after all this, yishta hanazir yayin. So hainu achar kol hamaisim kula. According to Rabbi Elazar, means after you do all the things, including cutting his hair. But Rabbanon, it's referring only to the bringing of the karbanos, muter b'yayin. So that is the third option, I believe. No, it's the fourth option we had for baltacher. And now we have a fifth option for baltacher. The fifth option is Marzutra Breda of Mori Omar, and this is what Akiva said, somebody who delays bringing the karbanos that he's supposed to bring when the naziris is over, if he delays and the delay period is 3 regalim, like every other carbon, he's over baltacher. Let's see what the Ran says about that. The Ran says, baltacher karbonosov lahachu kimta, according to this suggestion in the Gemara, the baltacher is referring to delaying the bringing of his karbonos, eino over baltacher elalacha gimel regalim. This is going to be like any other carbon, and it's 3 regalim. So the taglachas is for sure not 3 regalim because the Iran only introduces 3 regalim here. So the Arshko brings down, and I don't know where he gets it from. The Arshko brings down that the taglachas you will be over baltacher immediately, according to the Ran. I don't know where they get it from because Tosfos, in fact, says differently. And if we look at Tosfos, we will see Tosfos says mishum baltacher de taglachas zok Tosfos lo'ilamayri the shila naziris b'tayir. We're speaking about a naziris that was properly fulfilled. There's a mitzvah to take a haircut, and to put the hair and burn it underneath the pot that's cooking the shlomim. Umasha hataglachas, and one who delays the taglachas, over b'bal ta'acher will be over b'bal ta'acher. Mashma tzas, it's mashma slightly that it's la'acher shloishim yoim. Lo yigilach, if he didn't do the geluch within 30 days, he has to take a haircut. So we see from Tosfos that it's 30 days. I don't know how the ArtScroll was medayik from the Ram that it's immediately. If anybody has any insight into that, I would appreciate it. Because the only thing that I see is the 30 days that Tosfos brings down. And the Ram only addresses korbanos, does not directly address taglachas. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure how the ArtScroll came to that conclusion. Okay, let's see the Gemara weiter. Zog to Gemara, umin hacha nafkale. We just said that the hekesh from Nedarim to Naziris is where we know that if one delayed in bringing the karbanos of a Nazir, he will be over bal tacher. Frank the Gemara, mehasam nafkale. We don't need the hekesh from Nedarim to Naziris to tell us that if you bring your karbanos late, you're chai bal tacher. I can learn it out of the pasuk from where we know all karbanos, if they're delayed, they trigger an isur bal tacher. It says in the pasuk, "Ki darish yidrashenu." It says if you're, I don't have the psukim here, but it says if you are going to make a neder, you have to l'shachal l'shalom ki darish yidrashenu. We darshan from this pasuk darish yidrashenu. Elchatois v'shamois. It's not only referring to shalomim that you're menadim, it's referring to chatois v'shamois as well, which are mandatory karbanos. So chatois and the shamis, that's exactly what the karbanos of Nazir are. There's a chatas broth and there's a Nazir broth. So why do I need the hekesh from Neder to Nazir? I have a pasuk that includes all chatois and the shamis. Zok to Gemara, I still need a special hekesh because I would have thought that the chatois and the shamis of Nazir are different. Mao de tema chidushu shechitz Torah b'Nazir. I would have thought that there's a special chiddush here by Nazir, which makes it different. And just because we know that there's a bal tacher by chatois and shamis, Nazir might not be liable to that isur. So therefore, we need a hekesh. Frank the Gemara, my chiddush. What is the chiddush? What's so special about the chatas and the osham of Nazir that would lead us to believe that it wouldn't be covered by the same bal tacher as any other chatas or any other osham? If it's because you can't just willy-nilly say, I want to be mechayev myself harei alai to bring a chatas nazir. A nazir has a chiyuv to bring a chatas nazir, but a regular person who's not a nazir doesn't have the ability to say, I want to make a nether, I want to bring a chatas nazir. So since you can't make a nether for such a carbon, well, that shows that it's weaker than a regular carbon, and therefore maybe that's a reason why the normal bal tacher shouldn't apply to it. Zok to Gemara, that's not a logical svar at all, because a rechatos chelev, which the Ran tells us is a regular normal chatos, she'enat fisa b'neder, you can't willy-nilly say harei al chatos. If one did an avera, which was mechayev and mechatos, he brings a chatos, but you can't be mechayev yourself just like that. And we know for sure on a regular carbon chatos, you have a bal tacher. So the reason that you're trying to say that the chatas noder should be exempt from bal tacher makes no sense, because the regular chatas has that same issue, and there is a chiyuv bal tacher. So we still need to find something that makes chatas noder special that would lead us to the belief that it's not covered by the normal isra bal tacher. I would have thought, Naziris has something interesting about it. Now we know Naziris includes many different types of isurim. Isur to drink wine, isur to eat chartzanim, eat seeds of grapes, isur to become tamei. So what if the fellow says, I don't want to be a full Nazir, I just want to be a Nazir that I'm not allowed to eat the grape seeds. The halachas have a Nazir l'koil. Automatically, he becomes a Nazir. So even with what we would call a deficient Kabbalah's Naziris, it's still a schal. So that's something unique about Naziris. And maybe because of that, its carbon shouldn't be treated like a regular carbon. And maybe the generic Baal Ta'acher that applies to every Chatas and Osham should not apply to Naziris, and therefore we need a special hekesh from Neder to Naziris to be mechayev with Baal Ta'achar, Kamash Malon. Zogt Gemara, Hanichel Aman Da'omar, Ki Nazir Min Chaytzin have a Nazir L'koil. That works out really well if that's in fact what you hold, that Naziris has this anomaly. Reb Shimon Da'omar Ein Nazir At Sheyazim Mikulam, according to Reb Shimon who holds that Naziris does not have that anomaly, so then why would I think that Naziris is any different? Michael Meimer, the oid, and besides the point, what type of suggestion is it that since Naziris is so chomerdik that even a deficient Kabbalah's Naziris will lead to a full-blown Naziris, that's a reason why we should be mekel and not have a Baal Ta'achar? Adarabah, we're suggesting this Chiddush of Nazir is a chumrah. Even a faulty Kabbalah is good. So for sure, it should have a Chi Baal Ta'achar. The Chiddush that you're suggesting makes Nazir different would lead us to believe that therefore should be Baal Ta'achar, because it's a Chiddush L'chumrah. So we have to get back to the drawing board. What is special about Nazir that I would think that it's not covered by the regular chiyuv of Baal Ta'achar that exists by every korban? Elamai Chidushay, Zok Gemara, the Solka Daita Chamina. I would have thought the Imgilach al Achas Mishlosh Don Yotza. The halacha is there's a very big kula by Naziris, and that is really you're supposed to bring 3 karbanos. A Nazir has to bring 3 karbanos, and the Ran tells us that the 3 karbanos that a Nazir has to bring are a chatas, an oila, and a shlomin. Well, what if he took his haircut before he did all 3 karbanos? You would have thought that his giluch shouldn't be good, because the Torah tells you that first you bring your 3 karbanos, and then you cut your hair. Yotza, even though there's a kula that if a Nazir took his haircut before he was supposed to, it's still good. So that's a very big kula that we see by Nazir. So therefore, Le'liaver Leib Baal Ta'achar. Naziris is kuladik. So maybe the Isser Baal Ta'achar that applies to every Chat Shenosham will not apply to the Chat Shenosham of a Nazir. But Mashallah, that's why we need a special hekesh from Neder to Nazir to say, in fact, that there is an Isser Baal Ta'achar. V'boy. Or I have another option to show why we would think that the Chatas and the Shlom of the Nazir should not have Baal Ta'achar apply to it. And this is going to be the same teretz that we had a moment ago that we disqualified. And now we're going to requalify it. It's because you cannot make yourself a chiyuv to bring the Chatas of a Nazir. A regular person who's not a Nazir can't just say, Harei alai Chatas Nazir. We had a kasha with that. Our kasha was, that's not a reason. The fact that you can't be menada v'chatas Nazir can't be a reason why there's no Baal Ta'achar, because we can't be menada v'chatas chaylev either. And there is Baal Ta'achar. Zok to Gemara, chatas chaylev ka'asya l'chapara. Chatas chaylev has another reason why it's subject to Baal Ta'achar, because it's coming to be mechaper on an aveira. Chatas Nazir l'mayosha. A chatas Nazir is not being mechaper on any aveira. And since the Chatas Nazir is not mechaper on any aveira, the fact that you can't be out of it is a problem, is a disqualification. And that's why it needs a special hekesh to tell us that there is a chiyuv Baal Ta'achar. For the Gemara, that's not a problem either. But a Chatas Yoldis, the Chatas that a woman who gives birth, she also brings a Chatas. It's the loyas of the kapara, it's not for a kapara. And the Ram mentions, don't tell me the kapara is because every woman makes a shavua when she's suffering her labor pains, that she's never going to have a baby, and that's why she's bringing the chatas for, because that's just an agabarcha. That's not the main reason for the chatas, and the proof is in the pudding. What if a woman says, I know for a fact, in my mind, I never had such a thought. So what's the kapara there? So clearly, the chatas yeladis is not for a kapara of a specific avera. Nevertheless, over Allah, mishum Baal Ta'achar. Yet there is over Baal Ta'achar. So why shouldn't the chatas of a Nazir have the same rule? Zot Gemara because ahi kasher your law lemechal bekachim. The chatnus of a yoledis also has a special function. It releases her to be able to do the mitzvah of achilas kachim. So we have different things that we would justify a chi bal ta'acher. Either the chatnus yoledis because it allows her to eat kachim and do the mitzvah of achilas kachim, which Nazir doesn't do. The chatnus of the Nazir doesn't allow him to eat karbanis. He's allowed to eat karbanis anyway. There's the chatnus that's l'chapara, a regular chatnus. That doesn't apply to a chatnus Nazir, because like we said, the chatnus Nazir isn't either primarily for a kapara. And it can't be compared to a regular carbon because you can't be matmasit beneder. So therefore, the chatnus Nazir is an anomaly, and therefore I would think there's no chiyuv bal ta'acher for it. The generic bal ta'acher wouldn't apply to it, so we need a special hekesh to say that it does apply to it.
Just to get back, I know it's a little bit side. When a woman says that she makes a quasi neder, I don't want to have children again. Her husband has to really be. It's just a neder. It's not even an avera. I understand the havamina why she would bring a chatas for a machshava. Like I don't even understand the reason. I was told that reason
because she's for sure because she makes a neder that she's never going to have relations again with her husband. That's the neder.
Oh, that's the neder she makes.
Yeah. I'll actually show you the round inside. The round inside, right at the bottom of the Abdal and Amud Aleph, says right over here. Even Reb Shimon who holds that every yoledis did an avera, the bishah shekayeres yoledis when she's actually in her labor pains. She jumps up and she swears that she'll never have relations with her husband again. That's not really, that's maybe a taita, but that's not really the reason for the carbon. How do I know that? Even if she knows that she didn't have such a thought at all, still may be a carbon. She's still responsible to bring a carbon. So clearly, that cannot be the primary purpose of this carbon.
Since when does she have to bring a carbon for a thought?
Right, and well, that's another reason why clearly the chatas that the yoledis brings is not for a specific avera. Okay, so now we've justified why we need a special pasuk, a special hekesh, to say that there's bal ta'acher by Nazir. Okay, gewaltig. Omar ha'omer l'chaver. So now we're up to the next stickle of the water. So in order to understand the next stickle of the water, let's take a quick look back at the Mishnah so we could refresh our memory. The Mishnah discussed the different types of Nedarim that you might consider invalid, yet they are valid. So one of the items listed in the Mishnah, which is not really listed, it's there because of the Chasur Mechsera, is Yadais Nedarim. And we said the first item in the Mishnah that the Tana elaborates on are Yadais. So let's look at the example of Yadais that the Mishnah suggests. Someone told his friend, Mudrani mimcha, I am mudar from you. Mufrashani mimcha, I am separated from you. Or murachakni mimcha. So we have a menu, any one of these three nisaynas. But then the Mishnah goes on and seems to provide a second half of this same expression. Shani oichalach, shani toyimlach. Then it's also. So for instance, what the Mishnah seems to be is giving you, there's two parts to the nether. In order for the nether to be valid, you need to have two parts, but in each part, you have a menu to select which nusach you want to use. So you can say, Mudrani mimcha, shani oichalach, or you can say, Mudrani mimcha, shani toyimlach. Either one would be another. Or you could say, Mufrashani mimcha, shani oichalach, or Mufrashani mimcha, shani toyimlach. Or you could say, Murachakni mimcha, shani oichalach, or Murachakni mimcha, shani toyimlach. These are all different expressions of a nether. If you read the Mishnah, it seems like the pshat that I said is correct. But the pshat that I just said is going to come under heavy attack. So once again, the pshat that I said is that this Mishnah requires both the first half of the expression and the second half, but you have a menu of different phrases that you can use to represent the first half of your nether and you have a menu of two different choices for the second half of the neder. But both parts are required. Now we will see what the Gemara has to say about that. Zog the Heilige Gemara. Omar Shmuel. Shmuel said, V'chulam, these cases that we just discussed in the Mishnah, Ad Sheyomer, so whether he used mudrani mimcha, muruchakni mimcha, or mufrashni mimcha, they all require Ad Sheyomer shani oichala shani taimla. They require the second half, as we learned. And now the Gemara is going to attack Shmuel's halacha. Meisvei, let me bring you a brisa that seems to be very clear that in fact either one of these five expressions stands on its own to create an isser. The brisa says mudar ani mimcha, mufreshani mimcha, or murichakni mimcha, hareza aser. If you notice, our Mishnah doesn't say hareza aser. Our Mishnah only mentions aser after it quotes the second half of what he has to mention. Doesn't say aser. It continues. Then it's aser. So from the fact that our Mishnah says it as one big case, seems to support what Shmuel says, that you need to say both things. But if you look at this brisa, the brisa seems to indicate that each part on its own stands as its own nether. Without anything else. Shani oichalach, shani taimlach as well stands on its own. So this is shver on Shmuel, because this brisa seems to indicate that each phrase in and of itself stands as an isser. Zok to Gemara, hachi katani. Shmuel will explain this brisa as follows. Bamed devar mamurim. So let's read the brisa. Mudani mimcha, mufreshani mimcha, mufreshani reza aser. Bamed devar mamurim. When are they aser? When are one of these three phases aser? Ba'omer, if you conclude it with the second phrase, shani oichalach, shani tayimlach. Now this is not a good teretz. Why isn't it a good teretz? Because let's look at the brisa. Meisvei, mudar ani mimcha, mufreshani mimcha, mufreshani mimcha, hareza aser. Bamed devar mamurim. When is it aser? Only if you said shani oichalach, shani tayimlach. But then the brisa continues on. Hareza aser. What does that mean? We've already concluded with Bamed devar mamurim if you added shani oichalach or shani tayimlach. So this hareza aser makes no sense at all. And this kasha the Ran asks, and the Ran says, as a matter of fact, the Gemara is going to ask this kasha later. Why doesn't the Gemara ask it right now? Because the Gemara felt it as a better kasha. But in fact, this teretz is not a good teretz. Zok the Gemara, Vatani Ipcha. This is the alternate kasha that the Gemara thought was a better kasha. We have a second brisa that flips things around, which clearly shows that each phrase must stand on its own. Vatani Ipcha. First it lists off Shani Oichalach, Shani Taimlach, Aser, and then it lists off what we had as the first half of the phrase, Mudrani Mimcha, Umufreshani Mimcha, Muruchakni Mimcha Reza Aser. So this is clearly saying that each phrase will stand on its own. Because even if you wanted to say the Bamed Devar Mamurim Svara, this is out of order to do that with. Zok Gemara, I still have a kvetch how I can get out of this. Zok Gemara, Tani Hachi Ukfar Amar Modrani. So let's read what this teretz is. Shani Oichalach, Shani Taimlach Aser. When are these two phrases Aser? That's only if they were preceded by Mudrani Mimcha or Umufreshani Mimcha or Muruchakni Mimcha. That's how the Gemara wants to explain it. So it's a little more kvetchy than the Bamed Devar Mamurim option, but since we're listing off the second half of the phrase before the first half of the phrase, we don't have a choice. Oh, the lights went off over here, but we'll have to learn in the dark. So Zok to Gemara, Tani learn Hachi Ukfar Amar Madrani. You said the second half of the phrase. When does it create issue? If you had already said the first half of the phrase. But Frank the Gemara, that doesn't make any sense. Because the Haki Hanu Reisha. If that's what this brisa means, well then the brisa should have expressed it like the first brisa expressed it, where it first places the Mudrani Mimcha and the Mufreshani Mimcha and then Merchakim Mimcha, and only after does it mention the second half of the phrase. Because you don't present things backwards, present things in its simplest form. That's one reason why we don't like this shot. And the second reason why we don't like this shot is the Osir Lamali, the original question that we asked. The fact that it says Osir after the first set of phrases, and then again after the second set of phrases, clearly illustrates that the Brisa holds that each of these phrases stand on their own as a full neder. Osir Lamali Misli. Ella Amar Shmuel. So therefore, we're going to have to retract. And in fact, Shmuel never said that in order for the neder to have any validity, you have to say both parts of the phrase. In fact, even if you said one of these phrases, one of these five phrases, it would create Isser. So why does our Mishnah require both phrases? Because our Mishnah, remember, only has one Osir at the end of both phrases. Amar Shmuel, time of the Amar Shani Oichelach, Shani Toyimlach. That's where who the Osir Bechaverim Mutter. Zok Shmuel, the halach in our Mishnah is when someone said Medrani Mimcha Shani Oichelach. What I'm saying is I want to separate myself from you with a neder, and I'm going to prohibit myself to eat any of your food. But you are allowed to eat my food. If you only said Medrani Mimcha and nothing else, then not only would it be usher for me to eat your food, but it's reciprocal. It's also going to be usher for you to eat my food. By the fact that I added Shani Oichelach, I'm qualifying my original statement. My original statement was Mudrani Mimcha, or Meruchakni Mimcha, or Mufrashni Mimcha, which on its own would mean it's a reciprocal isser, but the fact that I added explanation to my intention, and I said Shani Oichelach, I said, no, I'm limiting what I'm trying to create. I'm only trying to create an isser for me to eat your food, but not for you to eat my food. So once again, Dr. Gemara, Shmuel, Taima, El Amar Shmuel, Taima, the Amar, Shani Oichelach, Shani Toimlach, who the Asr, the Chaver Mutter. Our Mishnah's halacha that says it's only Asr for him to eat his friend's food, that's because he added the Shani Oichelach. Aval, had he not added that, Aval Amar, Mudrani Mimcha, Mudrani Himecha, let me just get some light on this line of the Gemara. Aval, Amar Mudrani Himecha, L'chudei, Shneim Asurim. They would both be Asr because Mudrani Himecha means both I'm Asr to have enough from you and you're Asr to have enough from me. And we'll continue on with the elaboration of this new pshat in Shmuel, Be'ez Hashem tomorrow. I want to wish everybody a good tavach, and I want to thank everybody for participating tonight. We should have a git gebenched week with every bracha that exists.
Amen.
Amen. Yosy, that was great. I thought even in the dark, you knew the Gemara about that.
I wanted to share with you a very interesting story. There's a story with Reb Leib Suris. Now, I'm not sure if anybody knows who Reb Leib Suris is. He was a big Rebbe. He was like right around the time of the Baal Shem. There are stories, he once saved my great-grandfather's life going back 8 generations with a big nace, but we'll put that aside. His name was
named after his mother, Reb Leib Suris.
His mother was a very big tzaddikus, so he took on her name as his last name. And that's where the name of Leib Suris comes from. So I read this story in the Or Gedalyo from Rabbi Gedalia Shor, and he said, I heard this story from an Enikul of Leib Suris, who is Rabbi Baruch Sorotzkin. Sorotzkin, someone told me today, is the same as Suris. Sorotzkin, Sarah's grandchild. So that's the name Sorotzkin comes from Rabbi Leib Suris' name. So Rabbi Baruch Sorotzkin said the story over, that the Rabbi Leib Suris once went to the Baal Shem Tov, and he asked him, what is the significance of the dimensions of the Teva? 300 amas long, 50 amas wide, 30 amas tall, and a roof that's an amma. What are the significance? What's the symbolism in this measurement? So Rabbi Leib Suris, so the Baal Shem answered him, you know what? These are gepis. What do you think? So Rabbi Leib Suris says, this is what I think. There is no such thing as pure evil in the world. For example, the word Russia is really Ra, but there's a shin in the middle that's disrupting, that's limiting, that's retarding to a certain degree the pure evil. or take the word nachash. Nachash is the Yitzhar, it's a symbol of evil. There's a ches in the middle, which is the evil, which stands for chamas. And we know that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought the Mabel Ki Mala Ha'aretz Chamas, but it's surrounded with the Nun on one side and the Shin on the other side, which represent Toiv. And even the name of the Yitzhar, the Samach Mem, there's a Samach Mem, but there's an Aleph Lamed there. It's Kale. So anytime there's evil, it's always limited, controlled, blocked, encapsulated, whatever word you want to use, but it's somewhat tempered by good. But it comes a point where the evil is so bad, we have to amputate. And that's what happened by the Mabel. So therefore, Hashem took the Shein of Nachash, which is the good in that mixture, and made it 300 length, as what Shein is. It took the Nun, which is the Nun of Nachash, and made it 50 wide. It took the Lamed of the Aleph Lamed, that is the attachment to the Samach Mem, took the Lamed to 30 amas for the 30 amas height, and it took the Aleph as the 1 amma as the roof. That's the beautiful, beautiful Vart that the Leib said. So Aaron Grubner, it turns out that this Sefer that I got it, that I read it in Orgadal Yo, Avi Grubner, now Rav Avram Grubner, bought it for me as a gift when I left the Philadelphia Yeshiva. So I went to Aaron Grubner to thank him, because without a doubt, Aaron Grubner paid for it. So I thanked him for the beautiful Sefer, and I told him the Vart that I saw there. And he said, "Oh, my wife has a brother who's big into gematrias," and she said, and he said that the 3 dimensions, which in fact is Shin for the 300, Lamed for the 30, and Nun for the 50. He said it represents the 3 letters that spell Loshain, because there was a taina on Noach, he could have prevented it, had he used his Loshain to be Mekar of the people and to be Machshad and B'tshuva. So I said, that's a nice pshat, but I have the real pshat. We all know that what type of workforce did Noach use to build the Teva? It was a unionized workforce. How do we know? Because it took over 100 years to build the boat. So clearly it was a unionized workforce. So the Lamed, Shin and Nun is really Shin, Nun, Lamed, Schnell. The whole time he was telling them, Schnell, it's taking you so much time. That's what I thought pshat was. Okay.
But yes, what I want to figure out is, how was it your great-grandfather, and that's 8 generations?
What's the problem?
8 generations is
too long ago?
Grandfather?
Yeah.
You mean because it was too long ago?
Right.
Or not long enough?
A great-grandfather's 3
Listening.
generations.
No, I mean my great going back.
Oh, okay, now I got it. Okay.
Yeah, the story that my great grandfather had is he was once in his house. He was a very wealthy man, and Leib Suris comes to his house, and he says, "I want you to go to the porch right now and tell him Leib wants to talk to him immediately." So my grandfather said, "Like, you don't do that with the porch. I can't just barge in. Like, I'll get killed." Like, he says, "If you're not going to do it, then I'm going to send my accomplice. I'll send my meshamish to do it. I don't need your help. You better go do it." So Rabbi Leib Suris was known that you don't question it. So my grandfather went traveling to the Suris, and he said to the porch, he says, "Leib will want to talk to you right now in my house." So to his amazement and shock, the porch quickly got dressed in respectful clothing, and he came running to Yankel Fisher's house to meet Rabbi Leib Suris. They locked themselves up in a room. They had a long conversation. When the conversation ends, so Rabbi Leib Suris walks this porch to the door, and he tells him, "By the way, Mr. Porch, I want you to know that this fellow Yankel Fish, he's an expert in equestrians. He's an expert in horses. If you ever want to buy yourself a beautiful stallion, take him along. He will pick for you the best horse." My grandfather scratching his head like, "I don't know the first thing about horses." Like, "What are you talking about?" But he didn't question Rabbi Leib Suris. Sure. There were always blood libels. Once upon a time, my grandfather had many employees. He owned farms galore. And once upon a time, one of his workers died, was killed. And of course, they were blaming the murder on him. And he was in huge trouble. And there was going to be a huge trial, and he didn't know what to do. And he's sweating, and he had no idea how he's going to have the Yeshua, because they sort of had a blood libel on him. And one day, while he's preparing for trial, he's terrified. He doesn't know what to do. The parish calls him and says, we are going, I need to go buy a horse, you got to come with me. And it seems like now I need this headache. I don't even know how to buy horses, but the part says you got to come, you got to come. So he sits there with the parts, and they go to the city where the horse fair was. And as they're pulling into the city, they see the child who was the victim of his murder, who disappeared, sitting there on the street corner, on a curb. So the pirate sees that, and he says, Yaakov says, hey, you know I'm accused of murder. That's the kid who accused me of murdering. So the pirate couldn't believe it. So he quickly pulls over to the side of the road. They said, what are you doing here? So the kid said, the galach of the city said that if I don't disappear for at least a year, if I come back within the year, I'm going to kill you and your whole family. So I'm staying away, and I'm terrible. I'm crying. I'm lonely. I have nobody here. I'm homeless. So the Paris already saw what was going on. So he says, you come with me. And they took him home, and he took him to his private house, and he didn't tell anybody about it. By the actual trial, when the Galach was getting all his witnesses and testifying to convict my great-grandfather, the Paris says, I just have one presentation to make. And he brings the kid in. And that solved the problem. So that was the nace that we had in our family with the Leib Suris.
So, by the way, you know, the story with the Shlemazel, the Shlemiel, and the Dudnik. So what happened with the horse?
I wonder.
You never asked the punchline.
That's a good question.
I heard a story with Reb Leib Suris that he came to a town. They only had 9 people for Yom Kippur. He says, it can't be. There's got to be a minion here. Otherwise, I would never have ended up in this town. So they tell him, yeah, there's a Yid, there's a Paritz. He married the daughter of the other Paritz. He hasn't been here in 50 years. Reb Leib Suris said, I want to go speak to him. So he goes on Erev Yom Kippur to him, and he says, you know, even for you, it's not too late to do tshuva. And the guy turned white, came to shul, and he stood crying the entire Yom Kippur, and he literally died by Hashem Hu Elokim. His neshama left him, and Reb Leib Suris said he's now a tzaddik, and therefore tzaddikim b'misasum kurim chayim. We have a minion. V'hu rachim. That's the story I heard.
For Ma'ariv, you mean Motzei Yom Kippur?
Motzei Yom Kippur for Ma'ariv. He needed a minion, right? He died right after Ne'ilah.
Oh, gewaltig. As
As
long as he didn't buy Mafti Yoina and leave the shul on the lurch.
Right. That's right. That's other ones.
Okay, shkoyach.
Good Vach Yosy, shkoyach. I'll give you the report.
Only one question I have, Yosy.
Please.
Da seid ihr gewesen, physische Yid.
Right. So what happened to me?
That doesn't stammen from Chassidim.
The fish doesn't come from Chassidim?
Sorotskin?
Oh, Sorotskin. Yeah, Sorotskin, this it was shocking to me. You know, Zanger told me today. Sure, Baruch Sorotskin said the story over. The Sorotskin family are Einiglach from Leib Suris.
So they come from Chassidim.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
For a Telzer, I don't think there could be anything worse than that.
That's right.
Yeah. So he told me there's an epilogue to this story, Zanger, and I told him into negate the Pashas Vayichi, I think he told me, or Vayetze. So I told him he must tell it to me before Pashas Vayetze. Okay, I get the
You have something to tell us by Pashas Vayetze.
That's right. I'm always shopping for something good.